Okay, let's start at the beginning. Let's try and establish who these mysterious people actually were. They're commonly referred to as dwarves, which for many immediately conjures images of, stout, bearded folk from classic fantasy, maybe living deep underground mining for gold. But when you look at the archaeological evidence, it tells a very different story. Imperial excavations, for example, have uncovered Dwemer armor and tools, and they're roughly the same size as those used by typical humans or other elves. So that popular image, it turns out it's quite misleading.
Indeed, yeah, that popular image is a profound historical misunderstanding. Our sources suggest the moniker dwarf might have originated from an ancient fable, perhaps from giants who simply called them little friends in comparison to their own colossal stature. It speaks more to a perspective shift than their actual height. The term Dwemer itself, from the old Aldmeri tongue, translates to deep elves, which hints at their preference for subterranean cities and complex buried civilizations. But as the dissect theory postulates, it could also be interpreted as smart elves. And when you dive into their history and their incredible technological feats, well, that second interpretation certainly seems to fit. There's even a theory they were the brilliant students of the Elnafe, ancient spirits who supposedly taught them how to, defy the fundamental laws of nature.
So, we're talking about a race that was exceptionally intelligent, almost preternaturally so. Our sources consistently describe them as highly technologically advanced, and perhaps surprisingly, a particularly dogmatic race. Their early centuries in particular were absolutely steeped in conflict. It wasn't just squabbles over land and resources with newly arrived Chimer. They were known to have vicious internal conflicts among their own clans. They weren't exactly known for their harmonious neighborly relations, even among themselves. Fiercely independent, deeply committed to their own, often rigid, intellectual pursuits.
Precisely. Their intellectual approach to problems often superseded any reliance on brute force. There's a trait beautifully illustrated in the tale, The Ransom of Zarek. This story recounts the abduction of a young Dwemer student named Zarek by three enormous Nord brigands, Matthijs, Ulen, and Korg, who were described as truly monsters of strength. Zarek, remembering his mentor's advice to remain calm, observe thy surroundings, and look for thy opponent's weakness, swiftly identifies their fatal flaw, overconfidence and vanity. He cunningly tricks Korg into a dangerous swim across a river, knowing of hidden, submerged rocks that would dash him. Then he taunts Matthijs into a foot race near a cliff edge. Knowing of a hidden gap in the path he could jump over, causing Matthijs to plummet to his death. Finally, he exploits Ulen's pride by challenging him to rip up a tree, which Zarek knows conceals a beehive, enabling his escape amidst a furious swarm. It's a chillingly perfect example of their mental prowess overriding raw physical might, a cold, calculated approach to survival.
What truly set them apart, however, perhaps even more than their intelligence, was their astonishing worldview, particularly their deep-seated and almost, aggressive rejection of divinity. Our sources consistently state that Dwemeri culture was agnostic and preferred reason to faith. That's a stance that stood in stark contrast to nearly every other race, especially the Chimer, who were devout Daedra worshippers. It's almost as if they fundamentally saw the distinctions between mortals and gods as irrelevant, treating deities as nothing more than powerful, maybe deluded entities.
This philosophical stance is absolutely crucial to understanding the Dwemer. An anecdote from the tale on the utility of marbles and needles vividly portrays this disdain. It features a Dwemer character in a corner club, casually mocking a Nord for swearing by an imaginary but dead god, clearly referring to Shor, the Nordic father of men. He then scoffs at a Chimer for worshipping demons from other planes, which points directly at the Daedric princes like Azura, Boethia, and Mephala, who were central to Chimeri faith. Predictably, both companions react with rage, drawing their weapons. But the Dwemer, with an almost chilling detached precision, simply knocks a marble onto the floor. The Chimer slips, accidentally stabbing the Nord. Then, with a flick of his finger, the Dwemer sends a leather sewing needle spinning. It lodges point up in a crack in the floor where the flailing Chimer falls, piercing his eye and dying. It's a perfect, brutal illustration of their absolute disdain for faith, their belief in predictable physics, and their unwavering reliance on calculated logic to achieve their ends, even in a drunken bar brawl.
That's certainly one way to win an argument in a bar, quite a gruesome one at that. This deep-seated skepticism, this philosophical arrogance that one source calls a heroic abrogation of everything, quite understandably offended divine orders. The tale, Azura and the Box, subtly hints at the profound consequences of such defiance. It tells of an incredibly wise and ancient Dwemer named Nishulbar. who was consumed by the search for truth and the desire to dispel what he considered mortal superstitions. He sought to understand the very limits of divine power, believing many gods were just fabricated by mortals. He successfully tricked Azura, the Daedric prince of dusk and dawn, into believing he possessed a red-petaled flower in a box when it was in fact empty. While this act brought Nushilbar bliss, the profound intellectual satisfaction of confirming his own truth and exposing what he saw as Azura's artifice, a Chimer priest present trembled, knowing a curse had fallen upon the Dwemer for their blasphemy and skepticism. This philosophical arrogance wasn't just about denying gods. It might have extended to viewing even their own reality as an illusion, leading to a kind of profound solipsism, a belief that only one's own mind, or maybe the shared, empirically proven reality of the Dwemer, was truly real.
Indeed. Their philosophical stance can be directly linked to philosophical monism, much like Baruch Spinoza's concept, where everything is ultimately reducible to one fundamental substance. For the Dwemer, if gods, mortals, and even the very fabric of mundos were made of the same underlying stuff, then the hierarchical distinctions, divine versus mortal, sacred versus profane, became entirely irrelevant. This perspective allowed them to believe that this universal stuff could be reassembled or refashioned into something entirely new. Their ultimate ambition was to go beyond all perceived reality, to retreat behind math, behind color, behind the active principle itself. It wasn't about finding a new god or a new faith. It was about stripping away all illusion, all subjective perception, and working with the raw, objective fundamentals of existence. Their disdain for faith wasn't just a preference. It was a core tenet, driven by conviction that anything not provable by their rigorous mathematical system was, by definition, an illusion or a lie. Hashtag 1.2. The science magic of tonal architecture.
Given this absolute rejection of traditional faith and a reality they perceived as an illusion, you might wonder, what did they believe in? What powered their incredible advancements? The answer lies in something truly unique to them: tonal architecture. This wasn't just a discipline or a branch of study, it was the very core of their civilization, their fundamental science magic.
Tonal architecture was, at its heart, a method for manipulating the fundamental tones or resonances of creation itself. Imagine reality not just as a grand, intricate song, but as a complex symphony of vibrations, frequencies, and waveforms. The Dwemer, through their profound understanding of mathematical axioms and the inherent sonic properties of existence, learned how to change the notes, the rhythm, and even the fundamental melody of this cosmic composition. Baladas Demnavani, a noted Telvanni mage who dedicated his life to studying the Dwemer, observed that they had retreated behind math, behind color, behind the active principle itself. This wasn't a metaphor. It hints at a system where existence was literally reducible to precise resonant frequencies and numerical patterns. Dumak Dwarfking, a prominent Dwemer leader, even swore by the 15-1 golden tones, strongly suggesting their entire worldview was rooted in the precise mathematical manipulation of these inherent tones of existence, almost as if reality was a series of equations they could solve or a complex machine they could tune.
So their technology wasn't just based on steam and gears, it was deeply interwoven with this music of reality, almost as if they were literally composing their own world.
Absolutely. We see tonal architecture integrated into every facet of their technology, making it seem almost magical to outside observers. Their animunculi, their mechanical guardians like the heavily armored centurions, agile spheres, and scuttling spiders, often appear to operate without external fuel sources for centuries, instead being powered by some form of tonal Dwemer magic. What's even more fascinating is that some of these animunculi were capable of interpreting human intent and responding accordingly, showcasing an almost sentient level of functionality beyond mere programming. Take the giant automaton guardian found in Kemel Z, for instance. It was powered by a complex steam grid, yet when confronted, a magical frost was able to stop it, demonstrating this blend of steam and tonal principles working in tandem. Their very laws even accounted for this, stating that if a man was slain by an animunculi, its parts could be disassembled and taken within 30 days, implying a legal framework for interaction with these semi-sentient machines. Many theories suggest these constructs are connected to a checkpoint in each ruin, or a combined signal emanating from every ruin's mechanics, which explains why they lose power if removed too far from their place of origin. They're literally vibrating with the tune of their home.
And their ruins scattered across Tamriel still stand as a powerful, almost eerie testament to this mastery. We're talking about massive underground cities, sometimes stretching for miles, with intricate piping systems that utilize steam and geothermal power by tapping directly into natural lava sources. These strongholds, often called freehold colonies or city-states, were true architectural marvels. Their design philosophy favored precise square shapes over curves, revealing a meticulous approach rooted in exact calculation rather than imprecise arcs or organic forms. This reflects a society built on absolute logic and order. While Vardenfell's ruins might appear cluttered on the surface, sources suggest that Dwemer architects in other regions developed increasingly elaborate methods of hiding their strongholds over time, burrowing much deeper, possibly even extending into southern areas like Cyrodiil or Black Marsh, where their presence isn't typically thought to have been significant. We also see smaller, often largely above-ground structures known as archonics, which are believed to have been research centers, perhaps even for studying other races like men and Mer, whom they likely viewed with scientific detachment as alien variables in their grand cosmic equations. And then there's their metal. Dwarven metal itself is a marvel. It's usually copper in color, but can appear yellow, gray, or even green, depending on its alloy. Modern metallurgists have been completely unable to replicate its unknown process of forging, despite knowing it required intense heat of molten lava. It resists corrosion and retains its edge for centuries, a true enigma of material science. They even worked with rare, more exotic alloys like dwarven adamant, a hard whitish alloy, dwarven vitrine, also known as Dwemer glass, which resembles malachite, and the formidable dwarven ebon steel, used in ravimidiums and weaponry.
It's astonishing how their creations endure, almost defying time itself. Even their language, Dwemerus, remains largely untranslated, hinting at a complexity far beyond our current understanding. Many of their constructs appear to emit steam from their inner workings, a visible testament to the geothermal power they harnessed. Their technology wasn't limited to just animalculae and architectural feats. They constructed impressive airships, mechanical observatories like the one found in Kemmel Z with its precisely painted constellations, and advanced lighting systems that still illuminate their deepest chambers today. They even equipped animals with their signature armor, creating things like dwarven armored mud crabs and dwarven war dogs, showcasing their practical, if somewhat bizarre, application of technology to all aspects of life.
So, you can see how a society that fundamentally rejects divine power and instead perceives the world as a manipulable system of frequencies and equations would approach the ultimate existential questions. It's a society built entirely on empirical observation and the direct application of universal principles, almost as if they viewed existence as a series of intricate problems to be solved, or perhaps a faulty machine to be re-engineered. And if reality itself was just a machine, then perhaps the ultimate question for them wasn't if they could re-engineer it, but how. Which leads us, of course, to the astonishing discovery that truly set their sights on altering existence itself. The Heart of Lorkhan.
The Dwemer's unique, often chilling philosophy reached its zenith, or perhaps its perilous precipice, with their discovery of the Heart of Lorkhan. This wasn't merely a power source they stumbled upon. It was something far, far more profound, a relic of ultimate creation. Our sources indicate it was literally the divine spark of the deity Lorkhan, who in many myths is revered as the creator-trickster-tester, god responsible for the very formation of Mundus, the mortal realm itself. For the Dwemer, this wasn't about reverence. This was about dissecting the divine mechanism itself, seeing the heart not as a sacred relic to be worshipped, but as the ultimate prime mover, a pure source of stuff to be reverse-engineered.
Lorkhan, also known as the missing god, is central to the ideological schism between elves, who often see Mundus as a prison, and men, who generally view it as a divine creation. His heart, a fragment of his divine being, famously fell from the sky like a meteor, crashing into Vardenfell and forming Red Mountain. It was considered the first stone of the Red Tower, a focal point for immense reality-altering power. So for the Dwemer, this wasn't just a scientific breakthrough. This was the ultimate opportunity to prove their philosophical supremacy. This wasn't about simply denying the gods. It was about harnessing their very essence, using their stuff to fashion something entirely new. They saw it as a means to transcend the limits of Dwemer mortality, and even, as some sources suggest, to unmake the process of creation itself. To them, it wasn't blasphemy. It was the ultimate logical conclusion of their scientific and philosophical journey.
Philosophically, this ambitious drive aligns perfectly with their philosophical monism, much like Spinoza's concept where everything is ultimately one substance. If gods and mortals are made of the same underlying stuff, the very fabric of existence, then the distinctions between creator and created are, in their view, irrelevant. And if it's all the same stuff, then that stuff can be reassembled or refashioned into something entirely new. The Numidium, their ultimate creation, can be seen as an attempt to create a new medium for existence, rather than merely returning to a prior or less perfect state. It was an audacious claim to improve upon divinity itself.
This grand, almost unbelievably ambitious project led to the creation of instruments unlike any other. Enter Lord Kagrenac, the chief tonal architect of the Dwemer's Second Empire. He wasn't just a brilliant engineer. He was widely regarded as the foremost arcane philosopher and mage-smith of his time, responsible for designing their magnificent freeholds and the visionary mind behind the Numidium project. He was known as a meticulous and careful planner, though his exact goals beyond seeking to heighten his race to Numidium, a term shrouded in speculation. Possibly meaning to elevate them to a divine or ascended state, perhaps through the Numidium remains somewhat mysterious, hinting at a depth of purpose even beyond what our sources fully reveal.
Kagrenac designed a set of legendary artifacts known collectively as Kagrenac's tools. These weren't merely blunt instruments to steal power. They were specifically crafted to interact with the heart's fundamental tones, to perform what one source calls tonal manipulation of the laws of nature. Think of it as specialized surgical instruments designed to operate on reality itself, tuning it like a master musician tunes an instrument.
And these tools were quite specific in their functions, weren't they? Each played a crucial role in this terrifyingly precise operation.
Right. First, there was Wraithguard, a formidable gauntlet. It wasn't just armor, it was intricately designed to safely wield the other two tools. Without it, wielding Sunder or Keening meant instant death, as the raw divine energy of the heart would overwhelm and destroy the user. Wraithguard acted as a crucial conduit and protector, empowering their abilities while shielding the wielder from the heart's immense power. He was the necessary interface between mortal and divine.
Then there was Sunder, described as a hammer of divine mass. Its purpose was incredibly precise, to produce a specific, controlled amount of power from the heart with each strike, releasing what was called godlike power. It was the instrument of raw force, meticulously calibrated to tap into the heart's energy with an exact vibrational impact, like striking a perfect chord on a cosmic bell.
And finally, Keening, a short blade, often described poetically as a dagger made of the sound of the shadow of the moons. Its role was to precisely flay and focus the immense power produced by Sunder. Imagine the heart as a raw, vibrating mass of energy. Sunder would strike it, generating a surge, and Keening would then meticulously refine and direct that surge. Together, these tools transformed the abstract concept of tonal architecture into a literal, physical interaction with the divine. The process was akin to creating music from reality itself, with the striking of Sunder and the slicing of Keening orchestrating the very tones of existence, attempting to compose a new reality in their own image.
The culmination of Kagrenac's ambition, and indeed the Dwemer's entire philosophical drive, was the Numidium. This colossal construct was known by many names: the Brass God, the Brass Tower, the Walking Star, the Prime Gestalt, or even the Divine Skin. It was a 1,000-foot-tall automaton, a truly astounding feat of engineering and tonal manipulation, far beyond anything ever conceived before or since.
And its purpose was nothing short of astonishing, even by the Dwemer's own standards. It was their ultimate project, an attempt to create a new god in their own image. Not a god of faith, but a tonal god, a being that would, as some sources suggest, literally deny reality. This wasn't about returning to a previous divine state like some elves desired. It was intended to transcend the gray maybe, that is, to go beyond mundus, the mortal realm, by heroic abrogation of everything. This means a total rejection of all conventional existence, an ultimate act of defiance against the very rules of creation. It was about forging a wholly new medium for existence, perhaps even a way to reconstruct the Dwemer themselves by combining their souls into this ultimate collective form. It reflects that monistic idea that if all existence is one substance, they could refashion it into something entirely new, something perfect and controlled by their own logic.
Yet this audacious project, despite being the pinnacle of Dwemer ambition, wasn't without controversy even within their own highly dogmatic society. Our sources indicate that not all Dwemer were on board with Kagrenac's plan to tamper with the Heart of Lorkhan, while some, like Funamazanch, author of The Egg of Time, downplayed the risks. Others clearly warned of massive side effects. The Rorkin clan, for example, famously migrated west to Hammerfell, abandoning their previous holdings, precisely because they opposed the accord with the Chimer and implicitly the perilous, perhaps blasphemous path Kagrenac was taking with the heart. Their departure speaks volumes about the deep division Kagrenac's ultimate experiment caused.
What's truly striking is how others viewed this project, especially those who did believe in traditional divine powers. The Clockwork Apostles, devout followers of the god Sothosil, later called Numidium, the most profane of Dwemer creations, describing it as a walking horror, and an antipodal god thing. They saw it not just as a monumental threat to their own goals of cosmic convergence, but as a being that actively worked against the natural order of the universe, describing it as the welded knot at the center of Anu that must be untied, highlighting the profound danger it posed to the very balance and flow of reality itself. It was a machine designed to impose its will on existence, a direct challenge to the fundamental principles of creation.
The philosophical and technological ambitions of the Dwemer ultimately collided with the staunch religious beliefs of the Chimer. This centuries-long ideological conflict culminated in the climactic Battle of Red Mountain, which occurred around 1E 700. This wasn't just another war. It was the moment everything irrevocably changed for the Dwemer.
Leading up to this, the Chimer, who were deeply devout Daedral worshippers, viewed the Dwemer's plans to harness the Heart of Lorkhan as utterly blasphemous, a direct affront to the divine order. They saw it as a spiritual invasion, a desecration of the most sacred principles, and sought to stop it at all costs. Despite having forged a fragile alliance against the invading Nords decades earlier, an alliance that led to the establishment of the joint Dwemer-Chimer state of Resdain, marked by the Treaty of the Armistice. The discovery of Kagrenac's ultimate project ignited this final devastating conflict that brought their two powerful civilizations to open existential war. The Chimer believed they were fighting to preserve the very soul of their world against a people who sought to unmake it.
It was during this desperate, chaotic, and climactic battle that Kagrenac made his fateful decision to use his tools on the Heart of Lorkhan. Accounts from the period are fragmented and often contradictory, but most agree that he was attempting to activate the Numidium or achieve his race's ascension at this very moment in the face of imminent defeat. What happened next is a moment of unprecedented cosmic mystery, an event so profound that its true nature is still debated, dissected, and shrouded in wildly conflicting accounts.
One of the most dramatic and influential accounts comes from Vivek, a powerful former Chimer who would later ascend to godhood himself after the events at Red Mountain. In the 36 Lessons of Vivek, Sermon 36, he explicitly states that Kagrenac did manage to activate the Numidium, using it against the Chimer armies. Vivek describes the walking star causing immense destruction, shaking the very land itself and terrifying his forces. However, Vivek claims that he, along with Ayam and Set, the powerful future tribunal, managed to defeat this colossal construct. And it was immediately after this confrontation, according to Vivek, that the Dwemer were removed from the world. The sheer scale of this event even affected powerful beings like Vivek himself, who vividly remembers becoming sick after Red Mountain with the Nyx blood and fever and was infirm 100 years. Suggesting the trauma and cosmic repercussions of that moment lingered deeply even for a nascent god. Hashtag 3.2 Theories of Instantaneous Disappearance.
The instantaneous vanishing of an entire, highly advanced race sparked an avalanche of theories. What's truly fascinating is that many of these theories directly contradict one another, hinting at a profound temporal or metaphysical disturbance, a blurring of lines that makes it difficult, perhaps even impossible, to pin down a single definitive truth. Let's explore these competing narratives.
Okay, let's delve into these. The first and perhaps most straightforward theory suggests a miscalculation and catastrophic error on Kagrenac's part.
Right. Proponents of this theory point to sources like the Dwemer book, The Egg of Time, which features a chilling warning picture suggesting the heart's use would burn them all, implying an inherent danger. Another account from Nerevar at Red Mountain states dramatically that the Dwemer turned into dust all around them as their stolen immortality was taken away, almost as if they simply disintegrated. And there's tangible, if unsettling, physical evidence in undisturbed ruins like Bem's Emshund, which are said to contain little piles of dust where Dwemer would have been standing or sitting, at the moment of their disappearance, suggesting a sudden, complete material breakdown. This interpretation argues that Kagrenac's grand experiment was a colossal failure, resulting in an unintended destructive consequence.
In Yagrambagarn, the sole known surviving Dwemer, when asked directly if Kagrenac succeeded, cryptically states that the disappearance of his race suggests otherwise, lending credence to the idea of a failed outcome. Yet, to complicate matters further, Baladas Demnavani, another respected scholar, explicitly notes that the Dwemer left no corpses or trace of conflict behind, which directly contradicts the piles of dust and turned into dust accounts, adding to the profound ambiguity. If there were no corpses, where did the dust come from? This paradox only deepens the mystery.
A second, more optimistic, or perhaps existentially terrifying theory posits apotheosis and transmutation. This suggests that Kagrenac's plan actually worked perfectly, but not in a way we might conventionally understand success.
Yes, this theory aligns powerfully with Kagrenac's stated goal to heighten his race to Numidium, and possibly to make the Dwemer race immortal. It speculates their disappearance may have been the result of successfully granting the Dwemer eternal life in some form by shedding their mortal forms. In this view, the heroic abrogation of everything meant the truly transcended conventional existence, becoming part of the Numidium or perhaps some higher non-physical state of being. They might have become a new medium of existence themselves, fulfilling that Spinozan monistic ideal of becoming one with the fundamental substance of reality. This is less about failure and more about a success so complete it's beyond our current comprehension of what existence means.
Then there's the more grim, almost poetic theory of cosmic punishment or being zero-summed. This idea is quite terrifying, suggesting erasure from reality itself, not just disappearance.
This theory draws on various sources that highlight the Dwemer's profound hubris and their direct affront to divine principles. The Nordic account of the events, for instance, claims that Lorkhan, the very god whose heart they were attempting to harness, wreaked vengeance upon the Dwemer for their hubris, stating explicitly that they would die by his hand. And the Azura and the Box tale, where Knuckle mocks Azura, ends with the chamber priest trembling, knowing a curse had fallen, and that Dwemer's skepticism certainly offended the divine orders. This interpretation suggests that a higher cosmic force, perhaps the very deities they denied, simply rejected their attempts to unmake reality. To be zero-summed is perhaps the most existentially terrifying concept in Tamrielic metaphysics. It's not just dying or disappearing. It's as if your entire existence, your memories, your impact are retrospectively canceled out from the timeline. You don't just vanish, you effectively never were. There's no ghost, no lingering trace, just a profound cosmic erasure where you once stood. It's the ultimate consequence of denying reality itself. Reality denies you.
Our fourth theory is perhaps the most mind-bending, as it involves a temporal distortion known as a dragon break. This could potentially reconcile many of the conflicting accounts we've just discussed, allowing all of them to be, in a strange way, simultaneously true.
The evidence here is quite compelling. The Khajiit, known for their unique understanding of time and causality, implied that the events leading to the Dwemer's disappearance have had something to do with time being shattered. Our sources explicitly state that temporal distortions have accompanied each known use of the Numidium in subsequent eras, to the point that the warp in the West, which we'll discuss later, is sometimes known as the Second Numidian Effect. A dragon break is a period where the linear flow of time breaks down. Imagine multiple timelines literally collapsing onto each other, creating a chaotic period where contradictory events can all be simultaneously true. Like a choose-your-own-adventure book, where every ending happens at once, at the same time. The very flow of cause and effect becomes a tangled knot. And when it snaps back into linear time, history often realigns, sometimes with strange, impossible outcomes. The 36th Sermon of Vivek account, in particular, implies that a dragon break may explain many of the conflicting events and accounts of what had happened during the Battle of Red Mountain. The Dwemer could have been erased, transmuted, and punished all at once, or in different overlapping realities, depending on how time was experienced during that chaotic, singular event.
And finally, a less commonly supported, almost conspiratorial theory, the calling and self-exile. This one suggests a premeditated departure rather than a sudden cataclysmic event.
This theory, mentioned in ancient tales of the Dwemer, discusses the calling, a silent and magical communication that the Dwemer race as a whole supposedly shared, much like the telepathy employed by the elusive Sijic order. It proposes that in 1E 668, slightly before 1E 700 in the Battle of Red Mountain, Dwemer enclaves across Tamriel were called together by a powerful philosopher-sorcerer, likely Kagrenac, to embark on a great journey, abandoning their cities en masse. This suggests a coordinated, premeditated departure rather than a sudden catastrophic disaster. However, while it hints at organization, it still doesn't fully explain their complete and utter vanishing from Tamriel. It leaves a massive unanswered question of where they went, if they indeed left on their own volition. If they simply emigrated, why has no trace ever been found, and why do only their ruins remain? This theory feels incomplete, unable to fully account for the absolute erasure that occurred.
Amidst all these bewildering and often contradictory theories, one figure stands out, offering a poignant, if still puzzling, clue to the mystery: Yagrum Begarn, the only known surviving Dwemer. His very existence is a testament to the event's impact and a source of continuing speculation.
Yagrum Begarn was no ordinary Dwemer. He was a master crafter and a tonal architect who worked directly under Kagrenac, so he was intimately familiar with the grand project involving the heart. He survived the disappearance of his entire race because he happened to be in an outer realm at the time of the event, undertaking his own research. Unfortunately, upon his return centuries later, he was afflicted with a corpus disease, a terrible wasting blight that severely distorted his body and, crucially, his memory, making his recollections of that pivotal time fragmented and unreliable. His very survival is both a miracle and a profound riddle.
His survival and the circumstances surrounding it raise some intriguing implications, especially regarding the possibility of a grand, deliberate plan by the Dwemer. First, there's the question of purposeful absence. It's a little odd, as our sources note, that a tonal architect of his stature would be away during such a monumental event for his race, particularly if it was a premeditated attempt at transcendence. One theory suggests he was intentionally sent away by Kagrenac, perhaps to come along afterwards, to perform a crucial activation on the spirits bound to the Numidium, implying a deeper, long-term plan for the race's eventual return or culmination. His later distress at not having Kagrenac's tools when his memory slowly began to return certainly supports this idea. He might have been meant to complete a ritual that would bring his people back or fulfill their ultimate destiny.
Then there's the enduring mystery of what an outer realm actually is. His survival in an unspecified outer realm is curious, as no other character in the Elder Scrolls lore uses that specific terminology for other known planes of existence like Oblivion or Aetherius. While a fourth-era wizard named Phalion claimed to have seen Dwemer in Oblivion, our sources suggest it's quite unlikely they simply vanished into Oblivion as a race. Yagram, being a master of thought-calling, a form of telepathy that allowed Dwemer to communicate over vast distances, even across planes, would presumably have been able to find them there if that were the case. This implies his outer realm might have been something else entirely, a dimension or state of being far stranger and more isolated, or that the Dwemer's fate was far more final than mere transportation to another plane.
This leads us to perhaps the most compelling idea connected to Yagram's survival, and one that resonates deeply with the Numidium's purpose, the bound to Numidium theory.
This theory suggests that the Dwemer were, in fact, bound to the Numidium, akin to how the wizard Arnio Gain becomes bound to his research project in a later historical event, existing as a resonant energy signature. This would mean they achieved a form of immortality, but perhaps not the one they desired. Instead of transcending as free entities, they might now exist as consciousnesses, or perhaps uncollective oversoul, within the brass god waiting for activation. This would explain why the Numidium did not immediately activate after their disappearance. It needed a pilot to steer it, as one source hints, or perhaps a final external command to coalesce their collective will. Zan, from Skeleton Man's interview, states that the brass god was meant to be used many times by our kind to transcend the gray maybe. If the Dwemer are indeed bound within, then Yagram's intended role might have been to somehow activate these bound spirits, finally bringing the brass god and his people into their ultimate designed state. His fractured memory due to corpus, then, would be the tragic wrench in their grand cosmic plans, leaving the ultimate fate of his people unresolved and himself as a lonely, decaying monument to their ambition.
Even in their profound and baffling absence, the Dwemer's presence is undeniable across the entire continent of Tamriel. Their massive ruins, often sprawling underground for miles, are a chilling and awe-inspiring testament to their unparalleled engineering prowess and the sheer scale of their incredibly advanced civilization.
These strongholds, sometimes referred to as freehold colonies or entire city-states, were true architectural marvels of their age. They masterfully utilized steam and geothermal power by tapping directly into natural lava sources, creating complex, self-sustaining environments deep beneath the surface, allowing them to largely ignore the surface world and its conflicts. Their design philosophy was starkly utilitarian and precise. They favored exact square shapes over curves, revealing a meticulous approach rooted in pure calculation and a rejection of organic or decorative forms. While Vvardenfell's ruins might appear somewhat cluttered on the surface due to volcanic activity, sources suggest that Dwemer architects in other regions developed increasingly elaborate methods of hiding their strongholds over time, burrowing much deeper and leaving fewer external signs of their presence. We also find smaller, often largely above-ground structures known as arcanecs, which are widely believed to have been specialized research centers, perhaps even for detachedly studying other races like men and Mer, whom they likely viewed as mere biological subjects in their vast empirical investigations.
And many of these ruins are still guarded by their animunculi, those relentless mechanical guardians like centurions, spheres, and spiders. What's truly remarkable is that they continue to function centuries later, often appearing to operate without any external fuel sources. They only lose power if removed too far from their place of origin, which suggests a deeper, almost mystical link to the ruins themselves. Perhaps through some form of pervasive tonal Dwemer magic or essential energy resonance embedded within the very architecture. It's an incredible display of enduring power, a robotic army standing sentinel over vacant halls.
Their material science was equally enigmatic, a puzzle modern metallurgists still can't solve. Their dwarven metal is still an enigma, resisting corrosion and retaining its edge for centuries, with its unknown process of creation still unreplicable by any known means. Beyond the more common copper-colored metal, which often has a distinct warm sheen, they worked with rarer, more exotic alloys like dwarven adamant, a hard whitish alloy, and dwarven vitrine, also known as Dwemery glass, which visually resembles malachite but possesses unique properties. They even developed dwarven ebon steel, a particularly strong and dark alloy used in rare vimidiums and weaponry. Their technology extended far beyond just guardians and structures. They constructed impressive airships capable of flight, intricate mechanical observatories like the one found in Kemmel Z with its precisely painted constellations used for astrological or cosmological study, and advanced lighting systems that still illuminate their deepest chambers today, defying centuries of darkness. They even applied their ingenuity to biology, equipping animals with their signature armor, creating things like dwarven armored mud crabs, a rather unusual sight, and formidable dwarven war dogs for protection, showcasing their practical and sometimes peculiar application of technology to all aspects of life, regardless of how mundane.
And for you, as an adventurer or scholar, you'll find their artifacts highly prized throughout the Empire despite being strictly forbidden to trade under imperial law due to their connection to a vanished, potentially dangerous magic. Everything from highly sought-after weapons and armor, which are often the repurposed armored shells of ancient mechanical men, to intricate puzzle boxes and baffling control cubes, are eagerly sought after by adventurers, collectors, and mages alike. This enduring value of their creations, even in their complete absence, speaks volumes about their unmatched skill and the profound impact they left on the world. Hashtag 4.2, the Numidium's post-disappearance fate.
While the Dwemer themselves vanished without a trace, the Numidium did not. Its history after their disappearance is as significant and perhaps even more destructive than its creation, profoundly impacting the course of Tamrielic history for millennia.
Despite its initial non-activation, or perhaps a brief activation and then defeat by the tribunal, as Vivek claimed, the Walking Star eventually returned, or rather was reactivated centuries later. Emperor Tiber Septim, a pivotal figure who unified Tamriel at the end of the Second Era, utilized the Numidium to complete his conquest. He tasked his battle mage, Zurin Arctis, with its repair and activation. Since the Heart of Lorkhan was no longer available, Arctis replaced it with a powerful soul gem called the Mantella, which contained either Arctis's own soul or, in another account, the soul of Ysmir Wolfhearth, a powerful Nordic hero who may have been a mortal avatar of Lorkhan. This substitution was key to its later destructive power.
The Numidium, once reactivated, possessed truly devastating power, famously described as a world refusal ability. This wasn't merely a metaphor. Its activation could literally reshape time, leading to what are known as temporal distortions or dragon breaks. To clarify, a world refusal ability means it could negate or enforce aspects of reality simply by its presence and activation. It could alter fundamental truths. Its sheer power meant it could literally deny reality on a grand scale, forcing its will upon existence itself, bending the rules of the universe. This is how it reshaped time, causing those chaotic periods where multiple contradictory outcomes of a single event could become simultaneously true, as if history was momentarily trying to decide which path to take.
Centuries later, in 417, the Numidium became central to one of the most chaotic and enigmatic events in Tamrielic history, the Warp in the West, also known as the Miracle of Peace. This involved multiple factions simultaneously obtaining the Totem of Tiber Septim, the artifact that controlled the Numidium. The result was that several versions of the Brass God were activated concurrently, ravaging vast regions and dramatically reshaping the political landscape of the Iliac Bid in a single, chaotic, and indeterminate day. This truly demonstrated that the Dwemer's creation fundamentally altered reality on a grand scale, far beyond their initial intentions, even without their presence. It was later destroyed again, with the spectral Underking reclaiming his heart from the Mantella, finally laying that version of the Brass God to rest.
And the Numidium story doesn't end there, proving its enduring destructive legacy. Dagoth-Ur, a powerful antagonist in the late Third Era, attempted to build a second Numidium, which he named Akulakhan.
This was based directly on Kagrenac's original designs and was also intended to be powered by the Heart of Lorkhan. Fortunately for Tamriel, its full activation was prevented by the Unravel, saving the world from another potential reality-bending catastrophe. The Numidium, therefore, continued to be a force of world-shaping consequence long after its creators vanished, a testament to their profound influence.
What's truly intriguing, and perhaps profoundly ironic, is the idea that the Numidium was used multiple times for transcendence, but not by the Dwemer themselves. The warp in the West, for example, is even credited in some lore with helping to create new divine entities, like Manny Marco, the worm god, who ascended to godhood during that temporal chaos. It's also linked to contributing to the apotheosis of Talos, the future ninth divine, through the unification of various oversoul components during the Numidium's activations. In some of the deepest lore, the defeating of Numidium was even integral to the creation of a new universe, an amaranth, or a new dream from the godhead. It seems that the Dwemer's ultimate project achieved its goal of transcendence, but for others, rather than for themselves, leaving a legacy far stranger and more impactful than they could have ever foreseen.
The story of the Dwemer is a profound and deeply tragic cautionary tale of ultimate ambition. It speaks to the philosophical cost of attempting to defy reality itself, to bend the fundamental rules of existence to one's will, and to cast off the very concept of divinity. Their ultimate goal was to transcend, to escape the perceived illusion of mundus and create something new. But the outcome was an unanswerable cosmic question mark.
Their disappearance isn't just a historical event, it's a profound cosmic mystery, a question mark etched into the very fabric of Tamriel. Did they succeed and transcend to a new state of being beyond our comprehension? Did they fail catastrophically and get erased from existence in a puff of dust, or worse, completely zero-summed? Or were they punished for their hubris, for daring to challenge the very concept of divinity and reality itself?
The conflicting accounts, the profound temporal distortions associated with the Numidium, and the soul survivors' fractured memories all underscore that the truth might be far more complex than any single theory can explain. Their story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of reality, the limits of knowledge, and the perilous, almost blasphemous pursuit of godhood. It makes us wonder about the consequences of denying existence itself, of trying to rewrite the fundamental song of the universe.
Ultimately, the Dwemer, in their relentless quest to become gods by denying the gods, left behind a legacy of technological marvels and an enduring, haunting question. What does it mean when an entire civilization tries to write its own song of creation, only to vanish without a final chord? They sought to achieve ultimate control over reality, and in doing so, they vanished into its deepest mystery.
Considering the Dwemer's relentless pursuit of heroic abrogation of everything, and their attempts to unmake or reconstruct reality itself, what if their disappearance wasn't a failure or a punishment, but a success so complete that it transcends our very definition of existence, making them truly unreal in a way we cannot comprehend? What if to truly deny reality, you must become indistinguishable from its absence, achieving a form of existence so profound it appears to us as non-existence?